Good afternoon, everyone. Today, for the next hour, Brad Harris and I from Full Spectrum Survival are going to discuss how to thrive in the grand solar minimum, how you can prepare right now for the changes to come, the signs around you that you're seeing, how can you get ready, how can you inform those around you, how can you get community involved. This is what we're going to discuss for the next hour. I hope it's really helpful for you. And also I encourage you to jump over to Brad's channel, Full Spectrum Survival. It's a plethora of information for you, for your personal knowledge, how to get ready for this, and how to just roll with these changes, and when others around you aren't prepared, how you can become the leader in that community because you have the skills. That's why I say jump over to Full Spectrum Survival. You're going to learn a lot from that channel. There's so much valuable knowledge there that we can be using over these next few years as things around us in our lives begin to change with rising food prices and the effects that go with that. Shortage, how much food do we have in our supermarkets in the United States on general? What's the average daily number of supply that's in a supermarket? If everybody ran out there in the same day, how much food?
You don't even have a 24-day supply. You don't even have a 24-hour supply.
Yeah, not even. It's gone. People are buying the canned beans at that point. Well, that's right. The good stuff. Dry, anything dry that you can store, that's what you want to buy. You're not going to be wanting to buy bags of potato chips. That has no nutritional value and wasting your money. You need to get things that will keep you healthy, feed your family, feed you for a long time. You know, a couple pounds of dried, whatever it might be, beans or millet, sorghum, those are really good. Amaranth, all these kind of offshoot grains that you don't hear about too much. That'll keep you going for a long time.
Now, you brought up a main part of the just-in-time delivery system, and that's being able to get the food to begin with. And as the earth continues to change, the farmers and the governments are not prepared to change their growing habits. And in many ways, they can't change their growing habits because they are so stuck in a cycle of fertilizing, of introducing just massive amounts of minerals and chemicals into the food crops just to get them where they need to go. That as soon as the earth starts to change, they're not going to be able to keep up. They're not going to be able to catch up. So we could be looking at food shortages from that alone. What do you think as far as when there's noticeable change and when we start to see this cooling effect over the entire earth, when will we see that roll over into the growing cycle? And not just on a global level, but on a personal level, people who rely on their gardens every year.
You know, the entire Earth's not going to cool all at once. The growing seasons are going to get thrown out of phase, though. We're not going to be able to plant in the certain amount of time that we're normally used to because the winter will last much longer. It'll be rainier. And then it might snow in September like it did. You know, Canada lost an enormous amount of canola this year due to early freezes and abnormal snowstorms in September up there and October. But it's going to be regional cooling, like this 70 Fahrenheit below normal temperatures will come ripping across the United States. And then it might warm, you get an extreme weather event where a warm front will get sandwiched between two cold fronts, and then you'll get 4 seasons in a day. This is what happened in the 1600s that really threw those people off with their growing. The absolute calendar dates when we plant and harvest as we do today, that's going to be thrown out the window. We're going to have to try to gauge it old school way where you had to really just, maybe it'll work this year, maybe it won't. Not every year is going to be a super cold year. There's going to be some sort of normal years within there, but as the planting and growing goes, they're not going to be used to the cyclical, you know, plant in April and then harvest in September, October. It's going to get shortened. There's going to be heavier rain events, earlier snow events, earlier freeze events. And one thing in the 1600s and 1800s, and also back, you know, in 79 AD and the Roman Empire collapsed in 535, blight and mold on the crops. You talk about adding a lot of constituents to get everything to grow. They're going to need to be spraying so much herbicide and fungicide on the crops just to keep it healthy, because the blight and the mold that you saw in France and Germany this year was unbelievable. They couldn't even put that on the auction on the international market. Nobody wanted it. All of it went to animal feed. They only had 20% of the entire French crop that could be used for human consumption. The rest of it was relegated to animal feed. And Russia had some problems too. They couldn't even bid into Egypt this year.
And that's a scary thing too. A startling thing that we all need to take notice of is that we have reached a point that to feed the billions of mouths on this planet, we have to control the bugs through insecticides and herbicides, and we have to introduce minerals back into the earth because we have depleted it. And not just through gardening, not just through farming, but also through poor cover crops, through non-sustainable living. We have depleted the Earth's ability to provide on a massive scale. So when you say they're going to have to introduce even more minerals, they're going to have to introduce even more insecticides and herbicides, that's something that's very startling. And I want to go back real quick just to talk about what you said, that the growers, the farmers, won't be able to rely on a pattern like they are today. And that is something that, like you mentioned, it might work this year, it might not. It's at that moment in time that we will start to see severe food shortages, because as soon as a large scale group of crops don't take place, don't come in fully, that's when we'll start to see a hiccup. And that hiccup will, it's like a snowball effect. Then we'll start to see it push on down the line. And pretty soon you'll have people acting like they do in Venezuela, where they're knocking over aid trucks as the government tries to bring in massive amounts of food. And they are, pleading with their government to provide the food for them. So when you mention the inconsistencies there, I think we all need to take note of that and know, of course, we need to know that it's not an end-all be-all. It is not a death sentence. You can prepare for it, but you need to know that that possibility is there and do the best to your ability to prepare for it. Would you agree?
I would. And for the average person who just has a garden in their yard, instead of using all these chemical herbicides, look at Dr. Hamaker's work using granite dust to remineralize your soil. I've talked to lots of people who use just simply granite dust with no pesticides, no herbicides, and they're getting, double, triple yields out of there. Their plants are healthier. The insects just repel by themselves. Granite dust. It's so cheap, $20 for a huge bag. You can do your entire garden with it. And, those are kind of things that you might want to buy right now. Store an extra bag. Granite dust, you can store it forever. It's a rock,
Yeah, right. Yeah, and people need to consider cover crops and what cover crops reintroduce the best, minerals back into the ground. Now, do you have any extensive knowledge on topsoil and how it's been depleted?
Yeah, I do. Over all these years, there should be a rest and replenishing time. The Hawaiians are really good at that. Back in the day, they used to have 4 plots of land, and they would only farm 3, and they'd always let 1 rest idle. That's the way they would rotate it out.
Right.
We don't do that anymore. It's 24/7 chemical, and nothing ever has a chance to replenish. And the winds and the soil and the rains just erode everything away. We are living on depleted soils. That's why our food's so nutritionally deficient right now.
Yeah, oh, you're right there. That is a main concern within our community, is how little you get back from store-bought food if you're not in control of that. And then there is a certain scam that goes with organic foods too. So kind of understanding and mitigating all of the deficiencies out there and keeping yourself healthy with what you have available to you. Now, speaking of herbicides and pesticides, we just did a report last week on a new element that they're introducing to mosquitoes that is going to stop their liver function, stop their kidney function, and they actually explode after taking an eating. We're seeing similar things introduced into crops, crop pests, where it actually explodes the creature. Now, with a new introduction of herbicides and pesticides, of course, there is the concern of how its long-term effect will be on human beings and those that consume the crops that it's grown on. Do you have any words of wisdom there for what a person could do to realize those dangers and avoid them if possible?